Oh my! Oba Femi is giving a warning to Brock Lesnar. Lesnar ready to fight. And now Oba Femi destroys.
December 29th, 2025, and we just witnessed the impossible become reality. Brock Lesnar, the most legitimate combat athlete in WWE history, was systematically dismantled by Oba Femi in a match that nobody thought Brock could lose. The wrestling world is in absolute shock right now. Not the manufactured surprise when a predictable swerve happens, but genuine, jaw-dropping. Did that actually just happen? Disbelief that makes you question everything you thought you understood about WWE's hierarchy and who gets protected at all costs. Brock Lesnar, the Beast Incarnate, the man who conquered the Undertaker's streak, the UFC Heavyweight Champion, the final boss that WWE reserves for their biggest moments and most protected storylines, just lost cleanly in the middle of the ring to Oba Femi, a relative newcomer who most casual fans barely know. And the way Brock lost, the complete and total domination Oba displayed, suggests this wasn't a fluke or lucky victory, but a genuine changing of the guard that redefines WWE's power structure going forward. Here's the question that should be destroying your brain right now. Why would WWE sacrifice Brock Lesnar's aura, the most carefully protected mystique in modern wrestling, by having him lose decisively to someone who hasn't been built up as a conquering monster through months of dominant booking? The answer reveals itself when you understand what WWE is actually doing, and it's either brilliant long-term storytelling or catastrophic mismanagement of their most valuable attraction. But we won't know which until we see where this goes, and right now, in this moment, we're all just trying to process footage that feels like witnessing a legitimate upset rather than scripted entertainment. The match wasn't even announced until 3 hours before Raw went on air. Just a graphic that appeared on social media: Brock Lesnar vs. Oba Femi, scheduled for Raw. No explanation of stakes or storyline justification. The booking made no sense on the surface. Brock's been dealing with Jacob Fatu destroying him repeatedly, hasn't been positioned in any program with Oba, and Oba himself has been on NXT more than main roster programming. Why would these two suddenly face each other in what appeared to be a random Raw match? The explanation came during the opening segment when Paul Heyman appeared and provided context that made the match feel both logical and ominous. Brock Lesnar has been embarrassed twice by Jacob Fatu. Heyman began with unusual candor about his client's recent vulnerabilities. The Beast Incarnate's aura of invincibility has been damaged by a young upstart who doesn't respect legends, who doesn't fear reputations, who believes that youth and hunger trump experience and legacy. So tonight, Brock faces another young monster, Oba Femi, who's been dominating NXT and believes he's ready for the main roster stage. This isn't about championships or Royal Rumble positioning. This is about Brock Lesnar proving that his recent losses to Jacob Fatu were flukes, that the Beast Incarnate is still the ultimate final boss, that youth and hunger aren't enough when facing true greatness. The framing positioned this as Brock's redemption match, his opportunity to re-establish dominance against a younger opponent and prove that Jacob's victories were aberrations rather than signs of genuine decline. Oba was being positioned as the measuring stick. If Brock could destroy Oba convincingly, it would suggest he's still got it and the Jacob losses were just unlucky circumstances. If Oba gave Brock a competitive match, it would further the narrative that Brock's best days were behind him. Nobody, absolutely nobody, predicted what actually happened. Oba Femi entered first, and the immediate thing you notice is the size. Oba is legitimately massive, standing 6 feet 5 inches and carrying nearly 280 pounds of muscle with athleticism that shouldn't be possible for someone that large. He moved to the ring with confidence that wasn't arrogance, just the self-assurance of someone who genuinely believes they're the best person in the building and is about to prove it. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Curiosity about this relative unknown facing a legend, respect for his physical presence, but also skepticism that he belonged in the same ring as Brock Lesnar. Brock's entrance was pure intimidation as always, Paul Heyman by his side, that predatory intensity suggesting someone ready to make a statement. But pay attention to this detail that seems significant in retrospect. Brock looked tired. Not exhausted or injured, but carrying the weight of recent losses and accumulated damage in ways that suggested vulnerability even before the match started. The Jacob Fatu attacks had taken their toll, and Brock was entering this match not at 100% even if he and Heyman were projecting confidence. The bell rang and both men circled each other, the tension absolutely suffocating. Everyone expected Brock to immediately establish dominance through his amateur wrestling credentials, to take Oba down and control the pace through superior technique and experience. What happened instead was Oba meeting Brock's strength straight up in a collar and elbow tie-up that Oba won, pushing Brock backward into the corner with raw power that made the crowd gasp. Brock's expression showed genuine surprise. He reset, tried again, and again Oba matched him, this time executing a standing switch and lifting Brock off his feet in a waistlock before slamming him face-first into the mat. The message was clear. Oba wasn't intimidated by Brock's reputation, wasn't going to fight tentatively or respectfully, and possessed the physical tools to compete at Brock's level. The opening 5 minutes were a revelation. Oba was hitting offense that Brock usually absorbs and no-sells. Power slams, clotheslines, shoulder tackles, and they were actually affecting him, actually making Brock show damage and vulnerability. Every time Brock tried to mount offense, Oba countered or blocked or simply powered through it with youth and aggression. This wasn't a competitive back-and-forth match. This was a young monster systematically breaking down a legend who couldn't figure out how to stop the onslaught. Brock hit a German suplex, his signature move that's planted everyone from giants to technical wizards, and Oba popped right back up. Didn't sell it, didn't show damage, just absorbed a move that would incapacitate most wrestlers and immediately responded with a running power slam that planted Brock. The crowd was absolutely losing their minds because they were watching something that shouldn't be possible, watching the carefully protected Brock Lesnar looking vulnerable against someone most of them had never seen before. Around the 10-minute mark, Paul Heyman's expression at ringside shifted from confident to concerned. You could see him calculating, processing that this wasn't going according to plan, that Oba wasn't just giving Brock a competitive match, but was actually winning. Heyman started shouting instructions to Brock, reminding him to use his experience, to slow down the pace, to take control through technical superiority rather than trying to match Oba's power. Brock tried to implement Heyman's strategy, going for a Kimura lock that submitted John Cena and countless others, a legitimate MMA-derived submission that demonstrates Brock's combat sports background. He locked it in perfectly, applied pressure that should have forced immediate tap-out, and Oba simply powered out, lifting Brock while still trapped in the hold and slamming him into the turnbuckle to break the submission. The spot generated the loudest reaction of the match so far because it demonstrated that Oba's strength wasn't just WWE Power Moves strength. This was legitimate, uncommon physical ability that gave him advantages even elite competitors like Brock couldn't overcome. The match's complexion completely shifted when Oba hit his signature move, a devastating powerbomb he calls the fall from grace, that planted Brock with impact that shook the ring. Oba covered and the referee's hand hit the mat. 1, 2. Brock kicked out, but barely, his shoulder coming up at the absolute last millisecond in a near fall that made half the arena think the match was over. Oba didn't celebrate the near fall or show frustration. He simply pulled Brock up, positioned him, and hit another fall from grace, this one even more devastating than the first. The cumulative damage was visible. Brock was moving slower, showing genuine hurt, his legendary toughness being tested in ways that recent matches against elite talent hadn't required. But here's where the match took a turn that elevated it from great upset to genuinely historic moment. Jacob Fatu appeared on the entrance ramp. Not to interfere directly, just to watch, standing at the top of the stage with arms crossed and expression suggesting satisfaction at seeing Brock being destroyed by yet another young monster who didn't respect the old guard's accomplishments. Brock saw Jacob, and you could see the psychological impact. This wasn't just about beating Oba anymore. This was about proving to Jacob that the defeats were flukes, about re-establishing dominance in front of the person who damaged his aura. The distraction was momentary, but it was enough for Oba to execute a massive clothesline that turned Brock inside out and set up for the finishing sequence. Oba backed into the corner, measured the distance, and charged with a spear. Yes, a spear, the same move that Roman and Braun Breaker had been warring over earlier that night, that connected with impact that looked legitimately concussive. Brock folded from the blow, clearly hurt, possibly legitimately injured from how stiff the contact appeared. Oba hooked the leg for the cover. 1, 2. The referee's hand was coming down for 3, and everyone in that arena was watching the impossible become reality. Brock Lesnar was about to lose cleanly in the middle of the ring to Oba Femi, a relative unknown, on a random Raw without even championship stakes to justify the upset. 3. The bell rang. Oba's music hit. The referee raised his hand in victory, and the arena absolutely exploded with noise that mixed shock, excitement, disbelief, and the primal satisfaction of witnessing a genuine David versus Goliath upset, even though Oba physically looked more like Goliath than David. Paul Heyman stood at ringside with an expression of complete devastation, watching his client, the Beast Incarnate, the final boss, the most protected attraction in WWE, lying on his back having been pinned clean by someone who wasn't supposed to be on this level yet. Jacob Fatu was smiling on the entrance ramp, vindicated in his assessment that the old guard was vulnerable and the new generation was ready to take over. And Brock Lesnar remained motionless in the ring for a full minute after the bell, either selling the devastation of the loss or legitimately hurt from the physical punishment Oba had delivered. Medical personnel checked on him while Oba celebrated, the contrast creating powerful visual storytelling about changing eras and youth replacing experience as WWE's dominant force. The immediate aftermath created chaos backstage. Reports filtered through various wrestling media outlets about WWE management having emergency meetings about how to address this outcome, whether to pivot storylines to protect Brock's damaged aura, whether to push Oba immediately as a main event player or pull back and rebuild more gradually. The controversial aspect is that many insiders claim this wasn't the planned finish, that Brock was supposed to win decisively and re-establish his dominance, but something happened during the match that forced an audible and resulted in the clean loss. What could have happened? The conspiracy theories are already multiplying. Theory 1. Brock was legitimately injured during the match, possibly from Oba's spear or one of the powerbombs, and couldn't continue, forcing the early finish to protect his health. Theory 2. This was always the plan, a shocking upset designed to create buzz and position Oba as the next unstoppable monster, with Brock willing to do the job because he respects Oba's ability and understands the business value of creating new stars. Theory 3. This was a punishment for Brock, either for demanding too much money for his Royal Rumble appearance or for backstage politics that rubbed management wrong, with WWE deciding to damage his aura as leverage in contract negotiations. Theory 4. This is all part of a larger storyline where Brock's decline continues until he faces Jacob Fatu one more time at Royal Rumble in a match where he either reclaims his dominance or cements his irrelevance. The truth probably lies somewhere in the complex middle ground between all these theories, but what matters is the perception. Brock Lesnar just lost cleanly to Oba Femi, and nothing in wrestling will be the same after this. CM Punk, because of course Punk had to comment, appeared via social media minutes after the match ended. Brock Lesnar joins Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Braun Breaker, and everyone else who's discovering that invincibility is just illusion maintained through careful booking. The Beast Incarnate just learned what I learned when Tyler Black attacked me, what Dean learned when Roman dismissed him, what everyone eventually learns. WWE's hierarchy is built on sand, and when the foundation shifts, everyone falls. Oba Femi just announced himself as the future. Royal Rumble features 30 people, but now we know at least one person who won't win because Brock's aura is shattered beyond repair. The statement was provocative and arguably accurate. How does Brock recover from this? His mystique was built on being unbeatable except in carefully controlled circumstances against specific opponents who were elevated through the process of nearly beating him. Losing clean to Oba, someone who hasn't been built up through months of dominant programming, undermines everything that made Brock special. The rarity of Brock's losses was what made his presence valuable. If he can be beaten by up-and-comers on random Ross, what makes him special anymore? Paul Heyman addressed this directly in a backstage interview that aired later in the show, his voice carrying genuine emotion that suggested either incredible acting or real concern about his client's future. What you witnessed tonight wasn't Oba Femi being great, though he is talented and has a bright future. What you witnessed was the accumulated damage from Jacob Fatu's assaults finally manifesting. Brock entered this match compromised, injured, not at full strength. Under normal circumstances, Brock Lesnar destroys Oba Femi in 5 minutes. But these aren't normal circumstances. The Beast Incarnate has been targeted, weakened, and tonight that vulnerability was exposed. This isn't the end of Brock Lesnar's legacy. This is a temporary setback that makes his eventual comeback and reclamation of dominance even more meaningful. The spin was masterful but couldn't erase what everyone had witnessed. Brock had lost clean, had been dominated physically by a younger opponent, had looked vulnerable and human in ways that his entire character is built around not showing. The damage to his aura is real regardless of the storyline justifications Heyman tries to construct. Oba Femi's post-match interview was delivered with calm confidence that made him instantly compelling as a potential main event player. I didn't beat Brock Lesnar tonight because he was injured or compromised. I beat him because I'm better, stronger, hungrier, more motivated. Brock's been coasting on his reputation for years, showing up when he feels like it, collecting checks for being the Beast Incarnate without actually proving he deserves that position anymore. I just proved that era is over. The monster generation has changed. And whether it's me, Jacob Fatu, or others who are coming, the old guard needs to understand their time is finished. Royal Rumble features 30 competitors, and if Brock's smart, he won't enter, because what I did to him tonight was merciful compared to what will happen if he tries to compete against the new generation when we're all in that ring together. The declaration positioned Oba not as a lucky upstart, but as confident future star who genuinely believes he's superior to the legends. And after watching him physically dominate Brock for 18 minutes before pinning him clean, it's hard to argue with that assessment. As Raw went off the air with highlights of Oba's victory playing on every screen, with social media absolutely exploding with hot takes about whether this was brilliant or catastrophic booking, with Brock's status for Royal Rumble now genuinely uncertain, one thing became crystal clear. WWE just completely reshaped their landscape. The untouchable final boss has been touched, has been beaten, has been shown as vulnerable. Oba Femi announced himself as a legitimate main event threat through the most convincing method possible, by beating the one person everyone thought was unbeatable. And Royal Rumble is now even more unpredictable because if Brock Lesnar can be beaten cleanly by a relative newcomer, then literally anyone can win, literally anything can happen. And all bets are off about who emerges as the WrestleMania main eventer. December 29, 2025. The night the Beast Incarnate fell. The night Oba Femi became a main event player through one perfect performance. The night WWE's carefully protected hierarchy was demolished. The night everything changed. Brock Lesnar lost cleanly to Oba Femi. Process that. Absorb it. Try to reconcile it with everything you thought you knew about WWE's booking philosophy and star protection. And then realize we're living in a completely different wrestling landscape now, where the old rules don't apply and anyone can beat anyone on any given night. Welcome to the Oba Femi era. The monster era just ended. And nobody knows what happens next.